Hey everybody, it's some gadget guy. I'm super excited because we have an HTC One A9 ready to review. Okay, I'm absolutely just kidding. This is an iPhone 6S, and we're gonna see that joke so many times. I just wanted to get it out of the way right now. Just a couple minutes removed from HTC announcing their new HTC One A9, they had their live press conference. Very simple. Actually, this is something I'm going to praise HTC off right off the bat is their announcement for this new phone. Super sleek, very professional. Dudes talking straight to camera. I thought they did a great job of just sort of presenting a new product and letting that product sort of stand on its own. And we didn't get bogged down in a lot of specs. We didn't have a lot of pageantry or presentation. I think this is a very mature way for HTC to be handling their PR. We know this is a company on the ropes. We know this is a company that's trying to refocus their resources and trying to build out products that might be interesting to people. I mean, for all of the criticisms that are going to follow, I wanted to get that out right away. I wanted to get that out first, and I thought they did a very, very good job of presenting this information to us. And so now we should probably talk about the phone. So what got announced today was really interesting to me in that I I didn't know what HTC was trying to tackle with this new A series of phone. And so we've had a number of rumors out about what this was going to be. A lot of people saying it was going to be something of a mid-ranger, and that's kind of what got announced today. The A9 doesn't seem like it's going to be a direct replacement or a direct competitor to their M series of phones. Which again is now also putting way more pressure on their numbering system. It doesn't sound like we're ever going to get that HTC 2 smartphone. This is becoming the Street Fighter of smartphone companies. Street Fighter 2 Tournament Hyper XYZ Element OP edition smartphones, and that's kind of what we're looking at with the A9. So I'm gonna jump into screen share here real quick, because got a couple screenshots from that press video, and it does. It looks like it's gonna be a pretty device, but it looks like it's gonna be a pretty device in exactly the same way that we've been sort of criticizing Samsung for every company sort of reducing its basic elements down into an iPhone like shell. So I've got this right here, start screen share. And so this is a screen grab of the new HTC One A9. And yeah, it's the rounded corners, home button down at the bottom. It's going to have a 1080p display. It looks like an iPhone. I really for a company that sort of pioneered the rounded for a company that kind of that this rounded corner sides and for how pretty phones like the M8 were, this reduction really draws us into something that feels lazy. That kind of the word that I keep wanting to come back to. This doesn't drive smartphone design or innovation. And we're gonna have some different colors and stuff to play with. So we're gonna have topaz gold instead of rose gold. We've got carbon gray instead of space gray. We've got opal silver instead of regular silver. But at least this deep garnet looks like it'll be an interesting color option. It's the one that I was most interested in when they were showing it off during the presentation. And like these design accents are super subtle. Like the antenna bandings, very similar to the way that the iPhone is doing antenna bandings now. The camera is going to move to the middle of the phone instead of being off to the side. But even getting down into the bottom of the phone, we're now going to have a bottom firing speaker instead of front facing stereo speakers. The headphone jack is finished off in a very similar way to how the iPhone headphone jack is finished off. It looks, I couldn't tell from the announcement, and the video quality wasn't really good enough to show this off, but it looks like this could be USB Type-C. But regardless, it's such a dull design in this day and age. This really feels like HTC worrying about how they were going to present a new product, really playing it safe. I mean, just super, super safe. This doesn't feel like they're taking any risks. And I guess I can't blame them for that, because with other phones that they've tried to take risks on, they're typically, they've been often criticized in this market. But I don't know what to say about this, guys. I keep getting a little tongue tied on just trying to express, because it's not even frustration. It's HTC, when the M7 came out, HTC was my favorite Android manufacturer. The M7 was my favorite phone of that year. It battled it out directly against phones like the Lumia 920. I thought it was a much nicer overall experience than using the Samsung of that year. And then when the M8 came out, and then the M9 came out, it just felt like recycling. That's really kind of what I think, especially the move from the M8 to the M9. One of the reasons why the M9 got a lot of flack, and I think a lot of it undeserved, but got a lot of flack for not being new enough. It felt, oh, it's just a retread of the M8. Well, and also we had issues with the Qualcomm 810, so more conversation was spent on whether or not there were thermal issues than people actually reviewing the M9. But this doesn't feel like HTC pushing the boundaries on smartphone design. This doesn't feel like HTC treading new territory. This kind of feels like HTC looking at what's already popular with Samsung devices and with iPhone devices and saying, "Yeah, we'll do that." And I'm very skeptical that strategy can work in this day and age. Let's go to the HTC website. I don't mean to be sounding this frustrated. I'm really trying to sum up my thoughts in a way that I think is fair to what's going on with this design. But regardless, let's talk about some of the tech. We do have a full spec sheet. And what we've got is a 5-inch 1080p display. And remember, this is sort of a high-end mid-ranger. This is the positioning that the A9 is. We're not looking at this replacing their flagship line, and I really hope this means that we've got something edgier, bolder, sexier coming for an M10, if they even continue that letter number designation. But we've got a 5-inch 1080p display with Gorilla Glass 4. It is edge to edge, so the glass should wrap just like it does on an iPhone. It's going to be one of the first phones to launch with Android 6 Marshmallow. And they are going to be coming out with an unlocked edition, which I thought was really cool. The unlocked edition is going to have less custom software on there, and they are promising updates within 15 days of Google releasing an update. So when a Nexus device, when the flagship Nexus gets its update, HTC says their unlocked version will get an update within 15 days. Companies have made these promises before. I really want to believe HTC, but again, until we have evidence that they're actually going to be able to execute like that, we don't know. We don't know. So this is going to be rocking the Qualcomm 617 octa-core processor. So it's not even going to be up into the 800 series. They are dropping it down to the 600 series for, it makes sense for it being sort of a mid-ranger device. Let's see. They're going to be 2 storage and RAM configurations. So we're looking at configuration 1 with 16 gigabytes of storage and 2 gigabytes of RAM, and then configuration 2 supporting including 32 gigabytes of storage and 3 gigabytes of RAM. But we don't have confirmation on their store yet exactly what the pricing tiers are going to look like. I'll look through just in case I missed it, but that's kind of what we're looking at. But we still do have a micro SD card slot. So while we won't have a swappable battery, at least we can add more storage through micro SD. Excuse me. So the other major change is going to be on the camera hardware. We've got a 13 megapixel camera sensor with optical image stabilization. So I'm happy to see that. HTC's gone way too long. Since the M7, HTC has neglected to include OIS, and it's finally coming back. But with that sensor size, we've got an aperture of f2. And so I'm assuming that this is probably going to be a 1/3 inch sensor, especially at this price point. It means that for a mid-ranger phone, camera performance is probably going to be upper mid-pack. But of course, we've got to get our hands on it and then see what HTC is doing with their image processing software. They're touting a lot of features like raw image capture. So that's cool, but that's a cool, more professional grade feature for a phone that's mid-range, that's targeting mid-range pricing and mid-range consumers. So again, there's a little conflict on that feature set coming to a device that's not really targeting content creation. And they showed off some other things too, like it's going to have built-in hyperlapsing features. So if you take a really long video, it's going to try and smooth out the motion in your videos, and you can compress the time of the video recording. But it is going to be a backside illuminated sensor, and I'm happy to see that it's going to have sapphire covering the lens element, so your camera will be better guarded against scratches, just like the iPhone. These are all good. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm getting twitchy and frustrated. That's a good feature to steal from the iPhone, but it's like every little piece of this just kind of comes back to Cupertino. Fingerprint scanners going to be built into the home button. That I don't love the placement on home button fingerprint scanners, but at a 5-inch screen, it shouldn't be too difficult to use. I think the iPhone is one of the 6S, not the 6S Plus, is about as large a phone as I like to use with that bottom mounted fingerprint scanner, especially after using the V10, where the fingerprint scanner is built into the home button. I mean, the power button on the back. Anytime that we can move the power button so that we don't have to dance the phone around in our hands, I'm going to be a fan of. The battery on board is going to be a 2100 milliamp hour cell. I'm actually not familiar enough with the octa-core, the 617 that they're using. So maybe someone shoot me a Q&A or drop me a comment on whether or not they've had any of the 600 series chipsets experience with battery life, longevity, stuff like that. 2100 sounds a little lean for an all-day device these days. I'm sure with Marshmallow, it's going to have great standby times, but I'm never sold on a battery conversation where battery life is great if you don't use the phone. I want to be able to like use every feature on the phone for as long as possible with crazy long screen on times. But for losing the front-facing stereo speakers, HTC is touting the fact that they are still continuing to include class-leading headphone jacks. The DAC and the amp built into HTC phones has really been second to none. Even on the M9, which I know a lot of people kind of consider the M9 to be a dog. If one of your primary uses is listening to audio, podcasts, music, high quality audio files, the front-facing stereo speakers are nice, but the headphone jacks are still class leading. I did a showdown with the LG V10 and the M9 in my V10 review, and the HTC just barely ekes it out. It's a louder audio signal than the V10 with the same noise floor as the V10. So your signal to noise ratio on the M9 is phenomenal. So if we still get that, if we get that quality of headphone hardware built into the A9, that could be a really compelling reason to side with something like the HTC A9. So the A9 is a mid-ranger phone with amazing audio. That's a killer feature for me. That's cool. I'm an audiophile. I loves my audio. I need a phone that can power any type of headphones that I plug into it, from studio grade monitors to, janky skull rumblers from, like candy colored manufacturers. So all of that stuff could be super, super cool. So for all of this, and I'm assuming this is for the 16 gigabyte model, they're advertising a starting price at $399. So that's an interesting place to position a phone right now. That's a really competitive market as we start looking at, the entry level of idols and ASUS's sort of starting us off on a conversation of much lower priced gear, and then moving up into sort of the Motos, some of those mid-range Motorola's where you might be competing against a OnePlus. And then for that $399, you're also getting built-in warranty. You get a free screen replacement if you smash your phone with their protection. So again, like HTC is really trying to do everything they can to assuage fears. This phone is going to be just like any other phone on the market. This phone is going to perform tasks very well. This phone is going to be powerful enough to get you through your daily basics. They didn't cover these hardware specs during their press conference. They spoke very generally about the features coming to the phone, but they didn't give us numbers. You actually had to go to the HTC website to get that. So their focus wasn't on, well, we're going to, wow you with all these impressive specs. I don't think specs sell a phone in 2015 anymore. I think phones have become such an emotional purchase, such a style and fashion purchase. Does this phone fit my daily lifestyle? Does this phone fit my look? That it's for people who follow this channel. I mean, we care about specs, but if you're trying to get a phone, across the entire consumer marketplace, I think it's more about, does this phone make a wise emotional argument or a compelling emotional argument for someone to throw money at it? So the colors are going to make sense. The style, the design is going to make sense. But I'm still not sold. It's the same criticism that I had with the Galaxy S6. I'm still not sold that when you make a phone look like the iPhone, that people aren't going to go, oh, well, now that it looks like the iPhone, I'll buy it. Instead, I worry that for a company like HTC, customers are going to look at the phone and say, oh, it looks like an iPhone. Why wouldn't I just get an iPhone? Especially for, where is it? I've got it over here somewhere. Especially for how the M9 really started us off on this conversation of how we do phone design. I feel Apple took a look at this and then went back to the iPhone. Not like directly, but just as Apple was looking to return to a more iPhone 1, the original iPhone model, with the iPhone 6 and the iPhone 6S, this is sort of a throwback retro design to the way that Apple built the original iPhone. Only now they had the technology to do it without that black antenna bar at the bottom. I think they did that in part because the M7 and the M8 really sort of set the stage for how we can do antenna cutouts, how we can do an all aluminum clad body phone, how we can do it with rounded corners, really get that phone screen in place. And they did it with front facing stereo speakers. So everything's kind of circling around right now. Everything is kind of falling into this one homogenized bucket of smartphone stuff. And it looks like a lot of companies in trying to play it safe are kind of falling into the same design style trap. So I got a couple questions here in the Q&A from William Z. Do you think HTC has somewhat lost its signature with them dropping the front-facing stereo speaker? And I'm a little worried about that. I think there is a concern there where HTC is known for that feature. That is a feature that they, if anyone is aware of HTC as a brand, that's one of the things they know about is high quality audio. We don't always have that same conversation on things like the headset audio. It's one of the things that I've really been trying to express. I haven't been a big fan of the M9. I think it's a fine phone. I don't think it's a great phone, but one of the things that you can still lay claim to is if you're listening to audio from the speakers, it's the best audio on a smartphone. If you're listening to audio over headphones, it's probably still the best audio on a smartphone. A lot of these things can be subjective, but even when measuring stuff like the numbers on how loud it gets and how quiet the noise is, it's still a baller. I mean, it's very hard to claim that any other phone is objectively superior to what's built into the M9. So we lose one of those settings for the A9 in not having the front-facing stereo speakers, but hopefully we have the same high-quality headphone experience. And what do you think about the specs of the A9 as compared to the M9? That question comes from Philip S.J. And at this price point, that makes sense. At this price point, I don't even think HTC is looking at whether or not this is going to cannibalize sales of their M series. I think they're really trying to take a stab at walking into a new market for them. They've consistently been ineffective in delivering on the one brand for entry or mid-range level devices. HTC One minis have consistently not sold well here in the United States. And I think too much of their focus was on building out sort of a gimped low-end spec sheet, but then putting it in nice materials to try and make the claim that they can then charge mid-ranger prices for their entry-level handsets. So the A9 at least takes us a step where the specs on this make sense for it to be in the mid-range, especially if we step up a tier. And I wish I could find what the pricing. Let me see if I click on the pre-order while we're talking about this stuff. If I select the carrier. Okay, so this is hysterical. You know what? No, I'm going to... Please tell me it's going to show. That's ridiculous. Okay, I got to go back into screen share for this, guys. This is making me proper frustrated. So here I am on the pre-order page. I can select the unlocked version. I can select the, like if I want to do the AT&T version or T-Mobile version, nothing seems to be changing. Let's say I want the unlocked version in this really sexy red color. I'm coming down to the tech specs and it doesn't tell me what. So I've got configuration 1 and I've got configuration 2, but it's not telling me which configuration I'm getting with this unlocked or carrier versions. It's just the $399 total price. So does that $399 total price represent the 16 gigabyte, 2 gigabyte of RAM version? Or is that the 32 gigabyte of storage, 3 gigabyte RAM version? That's crazy. I like in trying to keep up with the reviews, I was actually thinking like, well, maybe I should throw $400 at this. Then maybe I could give it away. But I don't want to throw $400 at a phone right now if you're not going to tell me how much RAM and how much storage it has. Oh, come on, HTC. You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me. Oh, that's ugly. All right, I'm going to stop screen share now. Um, so Philip SJ, I mean, like for comparing the specs against the M9, the M9 is obviously still, I think, the superior phone. But I wish I could give you, I wish I could express more. The pricing on that would make better sense if we knew what price tier the 32 gig, 3 gig of RAM model would go for. I would feel better knowing that I could get, 32 gigabytes of storage, 3 gigabytes of RAM, that 617 series Qualcomm processor, put all of that together. And then is that going to be a $499 phone? Is that a $500 device? Because I don't feel so great about positioning that as a $500 device when I can pick up an LG G4. And if I really do my shopping, I can get an LG G4 pretty close to 400. I've seen it drop as low as 415 on Amazon, on eBay. I don't know that I want to throw money at HTC for that, So God, man, this is really choking me up. So Darko Nez writes, Europe gets 2 gigabytes of RAM and US gets 3 gigabyte version. And I hope that's true. I guess. I don't know. There is no official confirmation that I can find on HTC's site that is the case. That Europe will be spending $400-ish on the 16 gigabyte version and that the US will be spending $400 on the 32 gigabyte version. If we had that as confirmation, I would feel much better about saying, yeah, let's hit go on some pre-orders. And then William Z writes again, I'm still confused why HTC calls the A9 a hero product when everything seems to be too safe for its own good. Nothing about it truly stands out. Yeah, and well, I can't say nothing because once we get our hands on one to try and review it, try and play with it, the headphone jack could be a killer feature. I know we take stuff like that for granted. Oh, it should just have good audio. So many phones get that wrong. But everything else, this phone is going to disappear into the landscape of smartphone design. It doesn't have the sort of sexiness of metal and glass that Samsung has been pioneering, even though I don't like glass back phones. They do seem to be kind of popular. And then when you're looking at all aluminum clad bodies, on first glimpse, it kind of looks like an iPhone. From a distance, people might think you've got an iPhone, so it really is falling into a very strange position in this market right now. But I really don't. So Hero Device is tricky. Hero Device is a loaded statement because I don't think HTC is looking at this as their flagship. I think M will still be the flagship, and I'm still expecting to see an M10 early next year. I don't think this phone takes away from what HTC might be doing with a top of the line, high end, bleeding edge specs phone, because I also think they need to come out swinging when Qualcomm finally delivers the 820 series processor. So much of their bad press wasn't their fault. It was the 810 stealing the conversation on thermals. So this becomes a way for them to continue a conversation at the end of the year. We don't want to completely disappear from the marketplace. I think that's why it's really smart that Samsung has dual launches. You have your flagship at the beginning of the year. You have your phablet at the end of the year. I'm hoping that's what we see from LG. You have a standard flagship at the beginning of the year. We'll have a G5 out with some of the improvements from the V10. And then we'll have a V10 2016 or a V11 or whatever they want to call it at the end of next year, where they can really take all of the improvements throughout the year, all of the refinements, and then deliver on a high-end, super pretty fashion phablet like they did this year. So HTC script seems to be a little flipped. If this is the way they're going to be positioning products, it still makes sense to me to have multiple launches. You have their flagship, they'll have their bleeding edge flagship at the beginning of the year, and then maybe they'll continue to put out sort of a Midranger later in the year as we're getting closer to the holidays, the holiday buying season. You need to have some conversation in the market. You don't want to just completely disappear. So, folks, that has been a rambling and kind of it's not frustration. Maybe it's anxiousness. Maybe I want to see this company that I loved so much when the M7 was out, um, do something spectacular. I'm so excited that they're diversifying their product lineup with things like VR. The VR tech, that's cool. But I don't want to see them completely lose their edge on things like smartphones. I want to see them come back to tablets, like building off of Google's reference design for the Nexus 9. I was hoping that would give them enough insight into Android's future for larger screen devices that maybe they themselves would then come back to the tablet market. They were so responsible for getting me interested in smartphones back during the old Windows Mobile days. Slider keyboards and funky speaker bar pop-ups and just crazy experimental designs. They had the universal, if you remember those old Windows mobile phones, there's a clamshell flip screen, big, just monster of a productivity built smartphone. And I kind of miss those crazy days of HTC where HTC would take insane risks. I keep looking at phones like the HTC Surround, that pop-up speaker bar, Windows Phone 7. It was a terrible phone, but it was a bold statement on design and feature sets. They're going to build a slider into a phone, not for a keyboard, just for a speaker bar. And that set the stage for front-facing stereo speakers on the M8. This doesn't feel like that HTC. This feels like an HTC on the ropes. This feels like an HTC that's afraid. And that makes me really nervous about the future of this company. Got two other comments we've got from Yukimi. Yukimi Kazari. I've totally butchered your name. I apologize. HTC is disappointing me with this one. Not very happy. And Haniko Martin writes, "Can I ask something? When does HTC start to implement a DAC in their smartphone, and are they the first to implement that feature?" I believe it was with the M7 that they had dedicated, like separated for their boom sound initiative. That headphone audio jack was removed from the PCB of the rest of the phone, removed from that little logic board in your smartphone, and what was an extremely high quality audio setup. And then that was improved for the M8. And I believe with the M9, because they no longer have Beats audio, that it's a Dolby certified. It's a Dolby certified audio setup. So yeah, them's the breaks, guys. That's the HTC One A9. I definitely need to hear your opinion on this phone, guys. Drop me some comments on this one. We need more competition in the smartphone marketplace. Does this give us more competition when we're looking at mid-ranger prices? Like, are people likely to be pulled away from the Motorola's and the OnePluses and the other mid-ranger and entry-level phones when HTC is offering something at a $400 price point? That's where we need to skew this conversation. And we need to keep that in perspective too. Again, they're positioning this as their end of the year talking point. That doesn't mean that it's their flagship product. And now discuss. So, folks, thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more rambling, vloggy, commentary, reaction videos like these. And I would not be able to continue producing on this channel if you all weren't out there supporting it by hitting the fan funding, shopping via my Amazon affiliate links, grabbing yourself a loot crate, or signing up for a free audiobook on Audible using the links down below this video, and by sharing my videos on your favorite social services like Reddit and Facebook and Twitter and the Google's Plus and anything else that you might be sharing with family and friends. Hit that thumbs up button, and I will catch you all on the next video.